today, Israel marking a year since Hamas's surprise terrorist cross-border attack that left 1,200 people dead and 250 taken hostage. Now, already, events to mark the day are underway. A siren rang out as Israel's president began the day with a moment of silence at 6:29 local time, the moment that attack began at the site of the Nova Music Festival, where at least 370, mostly young people, were killed. Let's hear first of all then from some of the families.
You wake up in the morning, if you sleep at all, live and go to sleep dead inside. Every day, a whole year.
It's been a year that I don't know anything about my dad. Nothing. No sign of life. I want to tell my dad that I love him. Dad, I love you. I'm not giving up on you.
Families there of some of the hostages. Well, let's cross live then to our correspondent Irris Makler, who joins us from Jerusalem. Irris, of course, a very, very emotional day there. Tell us what's happened so far.
That's right, a very emotional day, and services across the country, down at the Gaza border, here in Jerusalem outside the Prime Minister's residence. Smaller services limited to 1,000 or 2,000 people at most in case there's incoming an attack from Iran or an Israeli counterattack. So small services. What's interesting about them, in addition to the raw emotion, you know, it's not post-trauma here. I'd say Israel is still in trauma, and it won't be out of trauma, really, or there won't be any recovery until the hostages are returned. 100 people still believed to be held inside the Gaza Strip by Hamas. Israel's Prime Minister saying about a week ago that he thought half of them were dead. 50 live Israelis who are still being held a year later, and we heard from some of their relatives. I think what's significant about today is that these events are not being organised by the government. They're not being organised by the State of Israel. They're being organised by civic groups, people who were at the Nova Music Festival, people who are returned hostages, people who lost relatives that day, people who still have hostages held inside the Gaza Strip. It's a civic response to the sorrow, and it's very interesting that the state has provided something quite controversial. It was controversial that this same government, A, is still in power, B, hasn't held any kind of national commission of inquiry, and certainly not the full one, you know, headed by a judge that people are demanding, and that the same people who were in power are organising a pre-recorded event that you can watch on your television, but no one is attending, and people here are saying it's because this government is afraid of its own people.
You were telling me, Irris, that you watched some of the coverage last night and you found it very chilling as well.
I did. You know, I was here working all that day. Sometimes it feels like every day since. And so it was quite confronting for me to sit down and watch the Israeli television coverage, which began at 6:30 in the morning, as the commemorations have done today, and just continued throughout the day, time-stamped, 6:30, 7, 7:30, 8. And from very early that day, Israelis in the south of the country are calling in, and they're calling in to journalists that they know because they're having no response from the military or from police. No one is coming to rescue them. And that's apparent from very early on. Some of them are whispering and saying, we're surrounded by armed Palestinians. They're in our kibbutz, they're in our town. Now they're in my house, now it's being burnt, and no one is coming. Can you please tell the army? So it was very confronting to listen to that, even though I was here covering it, because it really highlighted for me the sense of abandonment that many Israelis still feel, especially anyone who was in the south of Israel that day.
And is, Irris, finally, I assume tension will start to turn about to what comes next. I mean, once this anniversary is over, of course, that where are we with the situation with Iran will return to the forefront of people's minds.
That's right. You know, we did see this morning, for example, rocket fire from Hamas in the Gaza Strip, some rockets saved for this day, if you like. We have seen Israel widening its war in Lebanon. So everyone is very aware that Israel hasn't closed that front in the Gaza Strip. It has opened a second front, and there's the possibility of a third front, and a very serious front, something we've never seen before. You know, I've been reporting on a covert war between Israel and Iran for years. In fact, couldn't interest people in it really back in the newsroom. Now it's an overt war, and we don't know what the rules are. We do know that Israel is planning a counterstrike of some kind. We don't know what kind, and we don't know when. And what it will mean, you know, is it going to be a massive escalation? Is it something that'll be targeted, or something smaller that Iran won't have to respond to in kind? Are we on the brink of a major escalation with two countries who have massive firepower, and even though they're next door to each other, have the ability to do great harm to each other, as well as making this region-wide war and, you know, actually internationally, a war with international impact?
Irris, thanks so much. Irris Makler joining us there from the centre of Jerusalem.